since it's Christmas, we have something very important for you. Raymond Arroyo takes us behind the scenes of a special holiday journey of joy and remembrance for hundreds of Gold Star families. And he speaks to the catalyst behind it all, actor Gary Sinise. So stay tuned for that incredibly moving report. It's going to bring tears to your eyes. It did when I first saw it. But first, black-robed resistance. That's the focus of tonight's angle. All right, if you're like most Americans, you grew up with a special sense of reverence for judges. Well, watching films or reading books, regular folks have seen countless portrayals of judges as consummate professionals who set their own personal opinions aside and objectively weigh the merits of each case.
Since there has been no previous violation of this statute, there's no precedent to guide the bench passing sentence.
The witness will address this court as Judge or Your Honor. I'm quite certain I've earned it.
Since the United States government declares this man to be Santa Claus, this court will not dispute it. Case dismissed.
I still get goosebumps every time I see that. Well, but of course, then there's the real world, where certain judges act more like political pundits than impartial arbiters. Case in point, yesterday's sentencing hearing of former Trump National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. Judge Emmett Sullivan, most recently a Clinton appointee, used his moment in the spotlight to castigate Flynn with incendiary charges that weren't even brought by the special counsel. At one point, he told the decorated lieutenant general, "Arguably, you sold your country out." Well, then he cited Flynn's failure to register as a foreign agent, and the judge actually used the word treason, but with clever phrasing. He told the court, "I wasn't suggesting that he was committing treason. I was just curious if he could have been charged. Lots of conspiracy theories out there." Since when do judges start invoking conspiracy theories as grounds for imposing additional jail time or any jail time on a defendant? The special counsel actually, recommended no jail time. Nevertheless, Judge Sullivan warned Flynn that even if he cooperated further with the special counsel, he could still serve time.
This has to be one of the most dramatic hearings that I have ever witnessed, and I've been here in Washington nearly 20 years.
It only got worse, by the way. Naturally, liberal pundits were quick to cheer their honorable comrade-in-arms activism.
But I will tell you this, that today, a judge in Washington, D.C. stood up for our country. He spanked everybody in Washington.
The judge can exhibit whatever type of temperament the judge would like to exhibit in the judge's courtroom.
None of them understood the basic moral outrage that Judge Sullivan was going to bring to the proceedings.
I think that today was a really good day for the justice system and that this judge really did his job.
Totally. Well, sure, they love the judge's theatrics because he's part of the resistance. And today, he might have earned himself a full-time CNN contributor's contract, given the latest ruling. In a pre-Christmas permanent injunction, Judge Sullivan, and believe it or not, I read all 107 tedious pages this afternoon, ruled that Trump's tightening guidelines for granting asylum is illegal. Remember back when, it was back in June, when Jeff Sessions announced these new asylum rules?
Asylum is available for those who leave their home country because of persecution or fear on account of race, religion, nationality, or membership in a particular social group or political opinion. Asylum was never meant to alleviate all problems, even all serious problems that people face every day all over the world.
Common sense interpretation, no? Well, the move was needed because asylum seekers were abusing the system. Aided by a lot of leftist NGOs, migrants began parroting lines about gang violence and domestic violence to establish this expanded credible fear category because they didn't want to return to their homeland. With Judge Sullivan's opinion, today it's back to business as usual, pre-Trump, the way it used to be. The judge not only, by the way, demands that the administration revert to the old rules of asylum entry, but further, he instructed that the government return to the United States the plaintiffs who were unlawfully deported and to provide them with new credible fear determinations consistent with the immigration laws. Would you like a mint on your pillow, too? In other words, all those deported have to be brought back for new asylum hearings. Now, I guess they can stay at Sullivan's house as they await trial. Who knows? But from his activist judicial high horse, Sullivan apparently isn't bothered by the growing backlog of 800,000 now immigration court cases. 30% of those involve asylum requests. That's more than triple the number from 2009. Now, we've been talking about the scourge of unelected judges substituting their own policy preferences for those of the American people's representatives since this show started back in October of last year. The president ultimately won, remember, on his travel ban at the Supreme Court. But for every issue from transgender people serving in the military to climate change to the 2020 census to the Keystone Pipeline, these activist judges have waged an assault on Trump's agenda. And they've exceeded their constitutional authority in almost every instance. We're reminded of how important it is that Trump gets his judicial nominees confirmed as quickly as possible. Mitch McConnell's done a pretty good job, but we need this done faster, more expeditiously, and like yesterday. And if this means staying in session for an extra few days every month or even maybe into the Christmas holiday, well, guess what? The country depends on it. The Constitution depends on it. And shame on Congress for not doing its job in the first place and passing urgently needed asylum reform at any point in the last 2 years. They had the House and the Senate. They should have addressed this issue. They should have done a lot on immigration, including pass that funding for the wall. They didn't. Shame on them. Shame on these judicial activists. And that's the angle. All right, joining me now with reaction is Joe DeGenova, former U.S. attorney, and Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan, and Al Motor, attorney and Democratic strategist. Joe, what can we do about these activist judges? They're fighting Trump tooth and nail. Let's talk about Judge Emmett Sullivan. This was a stem winder of an opinion, by the way, 107 pages. Immigration law is pretty tedious stuff, but I practiced a little immigration law back in the day at my old law firm, so I know it fairly well. What is your take?
We have a rule. If it takes 107 pages to explain, it's probably wrong. It's pretty clear that the judge substituted his legislative and political judgment for that of the President of the United States. What the President did here was a perfectly reasonable rewrite of Obama's asylum rules. They are subject to a presumption of regularity, the President's rules. He denied him that. But more importantly, he used a weird standard. He said that the plaintiffs had a moral right to make certain arguments. That is ludicrous. That's juvenile. That's first-year law school nonsense. So when all is said and done, this is judicial anarchy. It's a shame. And after yesterday's performance...
That's a 1-2 punch for this judge.
After yesterday's embarrassing performance by this judge, I must say, one of the worst judicial performances I have ever seen in a courtroom. This coming after that is really a double whammy of embarrassment.
Al, bringing up, let's go to Flynn for a moment, bringing up the word treason. This was not an issue for the special counsel. Special counsel didn't use the word treason. An unelected judge on the district court in D.C. brought up the word treason. Like, oh, well, I know it's a conspiracy theory. I'm going to warn you, though, even if you keep cooperating, we can add jail time. What was that sentence of his?
Well, I mean, Laura, you're a lawyer. I'm a lawyer. I served as a clerk for a federal judge, and judges are obligated to tell defendants, even if you cooperate, you could still serve jail time. He needs to let him know what his punishment
That was
might
right
be.
after the treason, not treason line.
That's separate. Maybe that's a little bit excessive, but the point of it is he might still serve jail time, and there's nothing biased about that. And we need to stop bringing down our legitimate institutions like the judiciary.
Do you think judges are beyond criticism? We shouldn't ever criticize a judge because he has a black robe on, or she has a black robe on, she gets life tenure. Is that really? Because I see what we're seeing is a subversion of the American people's will here.
But what's happening here is it's not the judges who are activists, it's activists going to the judges because, as you point out, the Congress hasn't done its job.
Jim Jordan, it is true. Congress hasn't done its job on this particular issue. I think that not funding the wall is going to go down as one of the worst things to have happened to this administration. Forget Mueller. The wall has to be built. And this was a scandal that it hasn't been built. But we'll get to that. But on the judicial tyranny stuff, these nationwide injunctions, Joe, you and I have talked about it before. One district court judge can rewrite national policy when Obama is the one who rewrote it with his immigration appeals judge.
All right, no, it's wrong. And look, we should change the law. So we have an amendment we're going to offer tomorrow, which actually would reform our asylum laws. 85.
I got to tell you, the Republicans also can, with good conscience, say the Democrats had the chance to work with the president on this and refused to do so. They refused to do so.
This is a bipartisan problem that's been going on for decades, okay? Everybody in America wants compromise. But if the Republicans double down on the wall only and restricting asylum, you're going to have a situation where a lot more moderate Republicans lose, like the 40 who just lost in this last election. And it may be in the interest of able because they believe what you say. But I don't think that's what suburban voters believe or well-educated.
Suburban voters see this thing at the border and like, whoo, let's loosen asylum laws more. Let's, 3 cheers for the judge.
I think all voters are for security, but they also want comprehensive
So everyone who's subjected to gang violence, any gang violence, that's a lot of chunk of the world, and domestic violence, you make a credible claim, and then you're in, right? Is that it? You put that up to a referendum for the American people, they'll kill it every time. That's a joke. By the way, the Senate just passed the continuing resolution. Get the champagne flutes. The market, the futures are going up right now. The Senate just passed. The House, not going to pass. Yes? Yes.
We're going to offer our amendments. We're taking them to the Rules Committee. We're not going to vote for it unless the border wall funding, $5 billion, is on the bill.
All right. I want to move on to this telling exchange revealed in the former FBI Director Jim Comey's testimony released yesterday. Trey Gowdy asked about remarks made by former President Obama in October of 2015.
You think it's not that big a deal?
What I think is that it is important for her to answer these questions to the satisfaction of the American public, and they can make their own judgment. I can tell you that this is not a situation in which America's national security was endangered.
Okay, so Gowdy followed up asking Comey if he had ever spoken with President Obama about the Clinton email investigation, to which the ex-FBI chief replied, no. He said he never directed anyone at the Bureau to do so either. So, Joe, let me get this straight. Comey's FBI never briefed President Obama on an ongoing investigation about the Democrats' nominee for the presidency. So how could Obama be so confident there was no national security risk?
Well, what's really interesting is what President Obama did was command influence. by publicly telling the FBI and the Department of Justice that she didn't break the law. He told them the result he wanted, and James Comey delivered. He exonerated her illegally. She broke the law. There isn't any question about it. She broke the law. And he, the president, was communicating with her under a pseudonym to her private email account. So what you saw was a lie. He knew she was using a private server. He knew it because he sent her emails using a pseudonym. You know what? That's the kind of thing that makes people sick of politics. There's Obama lying through his teeth. He knew that she had a private server. He knew there was classified information because when you communicate with the president, that is classified. Automatically a communication with the president of the United States.
So
how disgusting. Right, he told the FBI what he wanted done. Drop the case.
So that's all right. We can't criticize him because he showed up at the children's hospital.
The baby Jesus. You're not allowed to criticize
with a bag of gifts. I kept thinking that big picture of him with a bag of gifts. That was nice. All the kids got to go. Maybe the emails were in the bag. I'm like, maybe that's where the emails are. That's where.
It wasn't the first time President Obama did that. Remember in the IRS investigation before it's closed out, he said there was no corruption there, not even a smidgen. So he did the exact same thing where when the investigation is going on, he's doing a big time interview and he prejudges the outcome there as well. So it's not the first time.
I'll agree that he shouldn't have said it publicly that way because there is a bit of command performance there. But the bottom line is this, and most Americans know this. It wasn't as big a deal as was alleged then. Comey exonerated her not illegally, fairly. In fact, if anyone was hurt by Jim Comey, it was Hillary Clinton 10 days before the election. So there was no bias toward her there. It was not for her, it was against her.
This is Congressman Jim Ratcliffe on with Martha about what on what went down. Let's watch.
He's turned out to be every bit as duplicitous and sanctimonious as folks told me that he was. I don't mind if Jim Comey is a partisan, but don't pretend to be a fair and impartial umpire. Saying that out of one side of your mouth, while out of the other side of your mouth, you're telling people to use their last breath to stop Donald Trump and Republicans and to vote Democrat.
John Ratcliffe, I mean, for Comey to have said, guys, that he deserves no blame and has no responsibility for the tarnished reputation of the FBI, and that's Donald Trump's done it. Did Donald Trump sign the FISA warrant based on the dossier?
Comey is delusional. He's a dirty cop. He's smarmy. He's self-indulgent. He's a loon. I mean, it's almost like he doesn't see himself. You watch him and you see a man who's emotionally disturbed. He's one of the weirdest guys in history. He ruined the FBI. Let's remember, he is a fired, disgraced FBI director. You can't say that about anybody else. It's amazing. What he did to the Bureau is he destroyed federal law enforcement for a generation by usurping the functions of the Attorney General. And she apparently didn't care.
Was there any point in time in which he really thought that stupid dossier, that all these lurid charges were true? Has he ever answered that? Was there any point in time where you thought any of this might be true? They made it as lurid as possible in order to get everybody's attention, correct? That's how it went down.
Even the first guy who wrote about it and the guy who was cited in the FISA application, Isikoff, said it was a false document just 2 days ago.
Well, with that, Merry Christmas, everyone. Coming up, are Democrats now for endless war all over the globe? Why their reaction to an announcement from the president today about Syria reveals their astonishing interventionist streak. Stay there.
Our boys, our young women, our men, they're all coming back, and they're coming back now. We won. Tried to rebuild the world and police the world. It's now time to rebuild the United States and to properly police the United States. And that's what we're going to do.
Promises made, and perhaps the beginning of promises kept. On the international front, President Trump making the surprise announcement today that he's going to pull American troops out of Syria. Now, remember, Donald Trump ran on a non-interventionist platform, and just this past March, he signaled that this is what he wanted.
By the way, we're knocking the hell out of ISIS. We'll be coming out of Syria like very soon. Let the other people take care of it now. Very soon. Very soon, we're coming out.
But the bipartisan interventionist cabal in Washington are still acting like we're in a post-9/11 mindset. Well, it's worth remembering. Obama ran against the Iraq war as a repudiation of the Bush Doctrine, remember? So why are military and intel leaders who worked or supported Obama saying this?
Well, this is very typical of the Trump administration. That is policy by tweet.
He looks for short-term wins, not the transformational approach of how do you make organizations better, how do you go for the long term.
You pull those advisors out, that sustainable security lapses, and then you have ungoverned spaces again.
What we have right now, essentially, is the president in almost a sort of a rogue operation, making impulsive, unilateral, and frequently bad judgments.
Joining me now are two men on opposite sides of this move. Jim Carafano, retired Army colonel and vice president of the Heritage Foundation, and Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, senior fellow at the Defense Priorities, who received a Bronze Star for his service in Afghanistan. All right, Jim, you think this was a strategic error for pulling out now? So my question is, what does America receive as far as a tangible benefit from remaining behind in Syria 2000?
Yeah, I don't know if we're on the opposite sides on this debate, because first of all, I don't know what side he's on.
Then leave the studio.
And I don't know what side.
Wait, what are we doing here?
Well, that's right. I don't know what.
Live TV. I mean, okay,
I don't know what.
I've known Jim for a long time.
I don't know what side I am on. You know what this is like? This is like somebody came and Roosevelt said, D-Day, what do you think, right? What's the plan? You know, how are we going to protect our interests? We don't know any of that. This might be a really smart thing. I've never been for a permanent base in Syria. I've always thought that was stupid. I thought we should do what we need to do to protect our interests. So when the president says we're coming out, what I read is everybody's response is exactly what their politics were the second before he said it. There's no analysis of what is the president actually going to do. So I think it's unfair at this point to go out and say, well, he's wrong. I mean, I think that's what Lindsey Graham said. I think is just completely irresponsible.
But you think it's imprudent, correct? Do you think
I don't know. I don't know if it's imprudent, because I don't know is what's our plan to protect our U.S. interests? How are we coming out? Because we do have concerns, right? We don't, for example, right? We probably wouldn't like Israel and Iran to have a war. Oh, that'd probably be bad. We probably wouldn't want Jordan and Iraq destabilized.
So does that mean we always have to stay?
No, absolutely it doesn't mean. I was never the guy that said the answer is a permanent U.S. footprint.
Right, but every time, and Dan, you got to help me, because every time we get into a situation in one of these places in the Middle East, we're told if we pull out, chaos will ensue.
Right.
Which means you can never pretty much leave. You have to stay because it's a situation that's it's kind of unstable. That's the nature of the game there. 17 years in Afghanistan, 15 years in Iraq.
Right.
15 years. Obama was elected to get us out of Iraq, and Trump was elected in part by being the anti-Bush.
Right. And the fact of the matter is, the Middle East was chaotic before we got there. The Middle East is chaotic today, and it's going to be chaotic after we leave.
It's worse. Is the Middle East worse?
I disagree.
Pre-9/11?
Trump has made the Middle East better.
Oh, Trump.
I would argue that.
I'm just
absolutely wouldn't argue that.
9/11 to, let's say, 2008. And ISIS comes. ISIS is born out of the instability in Iraq. We're still having insider attacks. I even hate calling them that, but our men are being murdered in Afghanistan. Another American soldier, Marine, reservist, murdered in Iraq or Afghanistan, excuse me, for what?
Yeah. But when Trump came in, when Trump came in,
our troops there do not keep us safe over here. We have many ways to keep us safe here. Otherwise, you will never be able to
never leave
ever.
Right. But when Trump came into office, ISIS was still running amok in the Middle East.
Oh, he did
when Trump came into office, there were over 1 million refugees that poured into Western Europe. None of that's happening today, and that's all due to Trump.
Well, that's due to smart use of our military power, not we're going to fix this here, we're going to jump over here. I mean, when we have this situation, we were just talking about the border deal. You both know a lot about the border chaos right now. People at home, I think, sitting watching this going, wait a second, we love the Christians in Syria have been brutalized during this period of U.S. interventionism there. And like, we can't even police our own border. Yeah. And we're trying to police the borders of these countries that have been at war with each other for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. It's very confusing to people.
Right. So when people say, when people reflexively attack him to say, I'm pulling out, let's just wait and see what his plan is before we.
But here's the thing you have to keep into consideration. Those troops were sent there, number one, by Obama administration against the Constitution because he did not get congressional authorization for them. He was using initially unvetted people, that many of which were against their own interest. And even if you say the best of that, it was to get rid of ISIS in Raqqa. With
mission accomplished.
Mission was accomplished in 2017.
But we got the neoconservatives who don't realize still that Trump won. Okay, and they've been good on some issues, but they were up in arms And a lot of defense contractors probably weren't happy today either. Let's watch.
This decision by the president was against sound military advice, that he did it himself, which he has every right to do, but he needs to own it.
Grave error that's going to have significant repercussions in the years and months to come.
Honestly, this makes what Obama did in Iraq. It's replicating that, but in many ways, it's even worse. I've never seen a decision like this since I've been here in 12 years.
People hear that. Okay, you guys are just kicking the can down the road. Another CR you voted on tonight. You're like saying this is the worst thing I've ever. You know, not $20 trillion in debt. How much money have we spent in Iraq, Afghanistan? Do you guys know combined?
Oh, well, I mean, it's $45 billion just this year in Afghanistan alone. So you've got to see
$6 trillion something total.
Oh,
add it all up.
Trillions of dollars. Yeah, absolutely.
How much has China spent in Iraq and Afghanistan?
$1.50, I don't know, something like that. Not very, obviously not very much at all.
They're watching us like we're going here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah, they like that.
Okay, well.
They love it when we pour money out there that does nothing for our interest. And here's the thing, we can keep ourselves safe. We don't need ground troops in Syria, because here's the thing. I can tell you from having served in Afghanistan and Iraq in similar missions like this, those small number of troops, the most things they do is actually defend themselves. They have very little ability to do anything, even on a tactical level, but certainly nothing on a strategic level. Our security will not be put in any threat by withdrawing those troops, because our security is not dependent on them right now.
We're ceding Syria to Russia and Assad, though.
Yeah, that's what they say.
Yeah, but that's irrelevant.
They already were there. But they've been there before, and they're there afterwards.
And we agree on this. I mean, that's irrelevant. Look, the Syria has been America's enemy in the Middle East since forever. It's never bothered us. It's not about Syria. It's keeping the problems of Syria from making everything worse. And as long as the president's plan to do that, we should all be fine with it.
This is what National Review wrote today. The American military intervention in Syria represents one of the most successful, cost-effective military operations post-9/11 era at a minimal cost to American lives. The ISIS caliphate has been reduced to rubble. Russian and Iranian ambitions in Syria have been checked, and the U.S. has gained valuable territorial leverage in negotiation for a permanent peace. But there's work left to be done.
See, that's the one part I have issue with. This notion is we have to hold land, and where I completely disagree. We have to own land on the ground so we can help negotiate the political future of Syria. We don't give a damn about the political future of Syria. That is a misreading of U.S. national interest. We have to prevent Syria from becoming a bigger problem for us. And as if the president's got a plan to do that, we should support that. And we should start with where we are, which is look at what he's done the last 2 years. He's made the Middle East a better place. He's made Syria less of a problem.
He gets no credit for that.
And gets no credit
he
for
gets
that. That's fair.
Zero credit for that. But Adam Kinzinger is really unhappy, so we should change it. I'm sorry, but the interventionist thing brought us, in part, Barack Obama. I'm never going to forget that. All right, guys, thank you so much. No one else will have this conversation on TV tonight. No one. Up next, something very special, an important reminder about the cost of our freedoms, what we're just talking about. Raymond Arroyo takes us behind the scenes of an incredible holiday trip for Gold Star families called the Snowball Express. He's going to talk to the families and the man behind it all, actor Gary Sinise, next. The holidays can be really difficult for those who've lost a loved one, especially the children of our fallen service members. Fox News contributor Raymond Arroyo is here with me now for a lot more.
Laura, every year, the Gary Sinise Foundation hosts a special trip that captures the spirit of Christmas. Last week, I joined these Gold Star families, Gary and the Snowball Express, at Disney World for an unforgettable 5-day experience, one that holds lessons for all Americans. You may have seen this video that went viral last week. The Nashville airport came to a standstill when travelers paused to sing the national anthem in the concourse. They were honoring children of fallen servicemen and women who were boarding a very special flight. This year, as it has for the last 13, the Snowball Express, sponsored by the Gary Sinise Foundation and American Airlines, has taken more than 1,000 children of the fallen from 87 cities on a Christmas trip filled with joy, family, and remembrance. Their destination was Disney World.
Every one of these children have lost a parent in military service. We want to focus on these kids. We want to bring them together in this healing environment and also allow them to have a lot of fun when they're doing it.
It's been really fun, and I've liked how we've got to go on all the rides at Disney World, and that because this is my first time at Disney World.
The walk of gratitude was just amazing at Disney, and it was super special.
Stephanie Collier, herself a war veteran, lost her husband to PTSD once he returned home. She and her 3 children joined the Snowball Express annually.
They had to deal with a lot at a young age, and she was only 2 months old when her father passed, so it was hard. It's been a huge change in them, too, the smiling faces.
For a moment, grief has been replaced with talk of a favorite ride.
Dino ride we went on, when we saw
Dinosaur ride.
I love that ride.
Me too. What's your favorite?
Everest.
Melissa Alt-Ricci's husband died a month after their daughter Elle was born. Melissa sees this experience as an important one for her daughter and all the kids here to
just have fun and just let go and have fun and enjoy themselves, which is really nice because they all have quite a burden emotionally to bear just throughout life. And so, sorry, I knew so I just think it's really special to give them those moments.
I know holidays can be a rough time.
It can be, especially when someone's always missing.
There is one special area at the resort set aside to remember the absent dads and moms who have brought them together. In between the fun and all the mirth to be had here, these families take a moment for remembrance. These 650 flags represent the men and women who have fallen in the line of duty or when they returned home. And these families take a moment in this room of remembrance to mourn them.
When I walked in, I was speechless. It's amazing when you look at these flags and you realize that it represents the parent of every child that is here. And also that this is just a small bit because there are so many others that have lost a family member, and it's just overwhelming. You're speechless. It's very emotional. My daughter did not know her father. He was the first Marine casualty after the start of post 9/11. So she was only 8 months old when he died, and just going through life without knowing your father, just hearing stories, but then becoming a part of Snowball, it makes you realize, and it makes her realize, wow, there are a lot of children here without a father, and you don't feel alone.
The shared experience bonds these Gold Star kids and allows them to establish close ties.
It's been an awesome experience for me, over the years. I don't get to act like how I do now due to the fact that people would make fun of me.
So what will you take with you back to Arizona?
Probably just spending a bunch of time with our family and friends. The best thing about here is meeting new people and just making friends.
They just feel like they're not alone, and it's children who lost their parents, and just to know that it's so many of them that's going through the same thing that they're experiencing, at such a young age, this helps them cope.
I've made a lot of friends, and I think it's super special that they do this for us, and I love it here. Every year we come, we just make more and more friends as we come, and it's beautiful.
These 2 girls met at the airport in California and stuck together for the entire 5 days.
I just saw her at the airport, and she looked like she was my age. So I was like...
I hear she was filling something out.
She was doing college apps, and I was like, she's a senior like me.
For us as moms, it gives us an opportunity to bond and then to talk about what we're doing to help our child to grieve. And it's a really good support system for us as well.
This year I met a new family. It's their first year, and she didn't know much about things that will help her, through her grief. And I helped her through this whole time. She's been with us this whole time, and her daughter, and she told me that her daughter really hasn't talked about what has happened with her father with any other children. So to come here and like watch them hold hands and go through the park together, that's the stuff that you really, nobody else on the outside really gets to see. You know, they see kids who lost a dad, they don't see what they're feeling. And this is the family that sees, you know, they know what we're all going through no matter what it is. And, you know, being in a military life is hard, and then losing somebody in it is very hard.
Every Snowball Express ends with a special concert by Gary Sinise and his Lieutenant Dan Band. This year was no exception.
So I want a rousing applause for Gary Sinise and the Lieutenant Dan Band!
Sinise and the band have been playing for Snowball Express families since 2007, eventually taking the entire program under the wing of his foundation.
What do you think as you watch these families recreating and forgetting about their loss for a little bit and finding that camaraderie with one another?
It's wonderful to see them smiling. You know, that's the whole thing for me, is just to make these kids happy, to let them know they're loved and appreciated. They get a lot of love, a lot of support. And it's emotional for them, too, because they're all thinking about the reason that they're here. That's why we do it in December, you know. It is a tough time for children that have lost a parent. We show them that we're not forgetting, we remember, we don't forget. That can carry them into the next year with a new sense that hey, I'm important. You know, what I'm going through is appreciated, it's not being forgotten, and that there are others. I'm not alone in what I'm going through. It's a beautiful event. I'm so proud that we can support it.
Okay, that's the best thing on television tonight. What a great job on that. Thank you for doing that.
Well,
I was crying.
People.
I had to like makeup.
Well, the Gary Sinise Foundation really should be congratulated for this. And this was an incredible gift to me. I mean, I did not expect to hear these stories or to witness this kind of terrorism.
You see the children's eyes, and every time I.
They should.
But this is where you use. I mean, I wish I could play an instrument. I would go.
We're going to go on tour with the
No, I'm
Lieutenant.
not. But it would be nice. We have all these Rihanna and all these wonderful.
Yeah.
And I know they do stuff. They do charitable things, so that's great. And
yeah.
But they all have such huge followings. It would be nice to see other people maybe occasionally go and help on this.
Important
fantastic. And from the sublime to the utterly ridiculous. Is Michelle Obama obsessed with the Trumps? No. Well, wait till you hear this.